The studio lights were warm, steady, and familiar. Just another day on the Dr. Phil stage. The audience settled into their seats, expecting a typical episode about relationship struggles. Dr. Phil walked out with his usual calm confidence, holding a folder of notes. He greeted the crowd, then turned his attention to the couple seated across from him, a man named Jason and his partner, Emily. At first glance, nothing seemed unusual. They sat side by side, but their bodies leaned away from each other, tension hanging between them like an invisible wall. Emily kept wringing her hands, eyes focused on the floor. Jason sat stiffly, blinking rapidly, as if trying to steady his thoughts. Dr. Phil started gently. Jason, Emily, you've been together for 15 years. That's a long time. What brings you both here today? Emily opened her mouth to speak, but Jason suddenly lifted his hand slightly. Can I say something first? Dr. Phil nodded. Go ahead. Jason swallowed hard. His voice trembled on the first few words. There's something I've been hiding. The audience shifted. A hush fell across the room. Emily turned to him, confused. Hiding what? Jason inhaled shakily. I've been lying. Dr. Phil raised his eyebrows. About what? Jason's breathing quickened. His fingers nervously twisted together. About everything. For 15 years. The audience gasped. Even Emily froze, her face draining of color. Dr. Phil abruptly lifted his hand. Wait. Stop the tape. Stop right now. The entire studio stopped moving. Cameras cut. Crew members froze in place. A silence so heavy filled the room that even Jason looked startled. Dr. Phil leaned forward slowly, his expression turning serious, more serious than the audience had seen in a long time. Jason, you don't just drop something like that and keep going. You need to explain what you mean. Emily whispered, barely audible. 15 years? Jason's leg began to bounce uncontrollably. He stared at the floor, unable to meet anyone's eyes. Dr. Phil took a deep breath. Son, this isn't a small confession. This isn't something you say by accident. What exactly have you been lying about? The room felt electric, like everyone was holding their breath, waiting for Jason's answer. And what he said next was only the beginning of a truth that would unravel this entire episode. The studio was silent, so silent that even the soft hum of the stage lights felt louder than usual. After Jason's shocking confession, Dr. Phil leaned back in his chair, studying him with a mixture of caution and urgency. Emily sat rigid beside Jason, her face pale, fighting back tears she didn't yet understand. All right, Dr. Phil said quietly but firmly. The cameras are rolling again, and I need you to take a breath. Then tell us exactly what you meant by 15 years of lies. Start from the beginning. Jason's chest rose and fell quickly, but he nodded. He clasped his hands together as if trying to keep them from shaking. When Emily and I first met, he began, voice trembling. I told her things about my life. Things about who I was, where I came from, my family, my job, but they weren't true. None of them were true. The audience reacted instantly. Gasps, shocked whispers, hands covering mouths. Emily shook her head. Jason, what are you talking about? We built a life. We have a home. We share everything. Jason turned to her with wet eyes. No, you shared everything. I shared the version I made up. Dr. Phil raised his hand again, not to stop the tape this time, but to stop the spiraling. Jason, you're speaking in circles. We need clarity. What exactly did you lie about? Jason squeezed his eyes shut before saying, my past, my family, my education, my job history, even my name, my full name. Emily jerked back as if the words physically hit her. Your name? Her voice cracked. Jason, who are you? The audience erupted into whispers again. Dr. Phil motioned for quiet. Jason's breaths grew sharper. I wasn't trying to hurt you. I wasn't trying to trick you. I didn't think someone like you would ever stay with someone like me. Emily's tears finally spilled over. You don't know what I would have done, because you never gave me the truth. Dr. Phil leaned forward. Let's slow down. Tell Emily, and everyone here, why you felt the need to create a different version of yourself. Jason wiped his face with shaking hands. I grew up in a rough neighborhood. My father wasn't around. My mother struggled a lot. I dropped out of school. I didn't have a clean record. When I met Emily, I was embarrassed. I thought if she knew the real me, she'd leave before we even started. So I built a different story. A better story. Emily stared at him, stunned. You lied about your entire life to impress me? No, Jason said softly. I lied because I fell in love with you too fast, and I panicked. Dr. Phil's eyes narrowed. Falling in love is not an excuse to build a 15-year illusion. That takes planning. That takes intention. That takes effort. Jason nodded slowly. Yes, it does. And I take responsibility for that. Emily covered her mouth, shaking. Our anniversaries, your stories about your childhood, every story you ever told me, were they all fake? Jason opened his mouth, but no sound came out. He finally managed a whisper. Most of them. The studio reacted again, another wave of disbelief and sadness. Dr. Phil held up a hand to control the room. Jason, I want you to think very carefully about what you're saying. This isn't just a small lie. This isn't forgetting to take out the trash. This is deception woven into every year of a 15-year relationship. So I need you to be honest now. Truly honest. Was there any moment, any part of this relationship, where you were yourself? Jason lowered his head. Yes, when I told her I loved her. Emily scoffed through tears. How am I supposed to believe that now? Jason reached toward her, but stopped halfway when he saw her flinch. He pulled his hand back, devastated. I know you hate me, he whispered. And you have every right to. Dr. Phil cut in gently. Emily has the right to whatever she feels. But we're not here to punish you, Jason. We're here to understand what happened, and what happens next. Jason nodded again, swallowing hard. The tension was immense, filling every corner of the studio. Even the audience, normally expressive, sat frozen, absorbing every second. Dr. Phil took a breath. Jason, you need to explain the depth of these lies, the extent, and more importantly, you need to tell Emily what your plan was. Did you ever intend to tell her the truth? Jason hesitated. The pause was long, too long. Dr. Phil's voice hardened. Son, answer the question. Jason finally whispered, No, I plan to take this lie to my grave. Emily let out a broken, painful sob. The audience erupted, some in shock, some in anger, some in disbelief. Dr. Phil immediately stepped in. All right, everyone hold on. Let's bring this back. He turned toward the camera. This is the moment we need to slow down and think. The studio was silent, so silent that even the soft hum of the stage lights felt louder than usual. After Jason's shocking confession, Dr. Phil leaned back in his chair, studying him with a mixture of caution and urgency. Emily sat rigid beside Jason, her face pale, fighting back tears she didn't yet understand. All right, Dr. Phil said quietly but firmly. The cameras are rolling again, and I need you to take a breath. Then tell us exactly what you meant by 15 years of lies. Start from the beginning. Jason's chest rose and fell quickly, but he nodded. He clasped his hands together as if trying to keep them from shaking. When Emily and I first met, he began, voice trembling. I told her things about my life, things about who I was, where I came from, my family, my job, but they weren't true. None of them were true. The audience reacted instantly, gasps, shocked whispers, hands covering mouths. Emily shook her head. Jason, what are you talking about? We built a life. We have a home. We share everything. Jason turned to her with wet eyes. No, you shared everything. I shared the version I made up. Dr. Phil raised his hand again, not to stop the tape this time, but to stop the spiraling. Jason, you're speaking in circles. We need clarity. What exactly did you lie about? Jason squeezed his eyes shut before saying, My past, my family, my education, my job history, even my name, my full name. Emily jerked back as if the words physically hit her. Your name? Her voice cracked. Jason, who are you? The audience erupted into whispers again. Dr. Phil motioned for quiet. Jason's breaths grew sharper. I wasn't trying to hurt you. I wasn't trying to trick you. I didn't think someone like you would ever stay with someone like me. Emily's tears finally spilled over. You don't know what I would have done, because you never gave me the truth. Dr. Phil leaned forward. Let's slow down. Tell Emily. and everyone here. Why you felt the need to create a different version of yourself. Jason wiped his face with shaking hands. I grew up in a rough neighborhood. My father wasn't around. My mother struggled a lot. I dropped out of school. I didn't have a clean record. When I met Emily, I was embarrassed. I thought if she knew the real me, she'd leave before we even started. So I built a different story. A better story. Emily stared at him, stunned. You lied about your entire life to impress me? No, Jason said softly. I lied because I fell in love with you too fast, and I panicked. Dr. Phil's eyes narrowed. Falling in love is not an excuse to build a 15-year illusion. That takes planning. That takes intention. That takes effort. Jason nodded slowly. Yes, it does. And I take responsibility for that. Emily covered her mouth, shaking. Our anniversaries, your stories about your childhood, every story you ever told me, were they all fake? Jason opened his mouth, but no sound came out. He finally managed a whisper. Most of them. The studio reacted again, another wave of disbelief and sadness. Dr. Phil held up a hand to control the room. Jason, I want you to think very carefully about what you're saying. This isn't just a small lie. This isn't forgetting to take out the trash. This is deception woven into every year of a 15-year relationship. So I need you to be honest now. Truly honest. Was there any moment, any part of this relationship, where you were yourself? Jason lowered his head. Yes, when I told her I loved her. Emily scoffed through tears. How am I supposed to believe that now? Jason reached toward her, but stopped halfway when he saw her flinch. He pulled his hand back, devastated. I know you hate me, he whispered. And you have every right to. Dr. Phil cut in gently. Emily has the right to whatever she feels. But we're not here to punish you, Jason. We're here to understand what happened, and what happens next. Jason nodded again, swallowing hard. The tension was immense, filling every corner of the studio. Even the audience, normally expressive, sat frozen, absorbing every second. Dr. Phil took a breath. Jason, you need to explain the depth of these lies, the extent, and more importantly, you need to tell Emily what your plan was. Did you ever intend to tell her the truth? Jason hesitated. The pause was long, too long. Dr. Phil's voice hardened. Son, answer the question. Jason finally whispered, no. I plan to take this lie to my grave. Emily let out a broken, painful sob. The audience erupted, some in shock, some in anger, some in disbelief. Dr. Phil immediately stepped in. All right, everyone hold on. Let's bring this back. He turned toward the camera. This is the moment we need to slow down and think. If someone confessed this to you after 15 years, would you stay or leave? And tell me, which country or city are you watching from? Your view might help someone going through the same pain. Jason's confession wasn't even over. The truth he revealed next would shake the entire show even more. The confession that stopped the show. Dr. Phil sat forward in his chair, fingers interlaced, studying the couple seated across from him. The studio lights dimmed slightly as the cameras zoomed in. The atmosphere felt heavier now, charged, uncertain, like everyone in that room sensed that something significant was about to surface. Rachel sat rigid, her nails digging into her palms as she wiped her tears, while Daniel avoided eye contact, staring at the floor like it held the answers to everything he had been hiding. The audience wasn't simply quiet, they were frozen, waiting, watching, and Dr. Phil finally broke the silence. All right, he said calmly. You've told us the marriage wasn't legal. You've told us you didn't mean to lie. But what haven't you told her? What haven't you told us? The studio held its breath. Daniel swallowed hard. His chest rose and fell as he struggled to form a sentence. There's more, he whispered, voice cracking. Rachel immediately turned her head toward him. More? She repeated, her voice splitting between anger and fear. What do you mean more, Daniel? Dr. Phil leaned forward. Daniel, this is the moment. This is where the truth sets everyone free or crushes what's left of your relationship. But right now, honesty is non-negotiable. Daniel wiped his forehead, trembling. I didn't just lie about the marriage, he finally said. I lied about everything. For 15 years. The audience gasped, an actual audible wave that rolled across the studio. Dr. Phil raised a hand, not to silence the audience, but to signal the cameras. Keep rolling. Rachel blinked repeatedly, tears pooling. Everything? What does that even mean? You're not making sense. I didn't tell you about the loans, Daniel said. The debt, the accounts, the job changes, the messages, the money I said I sent to my mom. I didn't send it. He paused, covering his face with both hands. I've been living two different lives. Dr. Phil inhaled slowly. The cameras tightened in on Rachel. Two different lives? She said, nearly choking on her words. Daniel, look at me. Look at me. What are you talking about? He lifted his head. I wasn't honest about who I was when we met, he said quietly. And instead of telling you the truth, I kept creating more lies to protect the old ones. And it got bigger and bigger. And eventually, I didn't know how to undo them. So I didn't. The shock in Rachel's face looked like pain physically striking her. The audience murmured again. Dr. Phil lifted a hand, directing his attention to the audience now. Hey, everyone watching this in the studio and online, stay with me a second. What you're seeing right now is 15 years of buried truth finally coming up. I want you all to pay attention because what happens next is something every relationship can learn from. He turned back to Daniel. You say you lived two lives? Tell us what the second one was. Daniel's hands shook. His voice dropped to a low, almost defeated tone. I wasn't faithful emotionally, he admitted. I talked to people online. Nothing physical, but I lied every time she asked me. I told her it was just friends, just coworkers, but it was more than that. Rachel collapsed into the back of her chair, jaw trembling. Dr. Phil nodded slowly. Emotional infidelity, he repeated. You understand that for many people, that hurts as much, sometimes even more, than a physical affair. Daniel didn't speak. He couldn't. Rachel leaned forward, voice breaking. For 15 years, Daniel? 15? How do you sit next to someone every day? Someone who trusts you, someone who loves you, and you keep something like this hidden? Daniel didn't answer. Dr. Phil stepped in. Rachel, I know this is devastating, but I need to ask you something important, and everyone watching can relate to this question. He paused for dramatic effect. When did you first feel something was off? Rachel hesitated, thinking. I think deep down, I always felt like he wasn't telling me everything, she whispered. He would hide his phone. He'd get defensive when I asked simple questions. He'd change the topic when I brought up our marriage paperwork. But I trusted him. I chose to believe him. Dr. Phil nodded. And that's what love does. It makes people overlook the red flags because the heart wants peace more than the mind wants truth. He turned to the camera again. Those watching right now, have you ever ignored something that felt wrong because you were afraid of losing someone? Let me know in the comments. Because this, right here, is how 15 years of deception becomes possible. The audience murmured again, many nodding. Rachel wiped her eyes, voice trembling but stronger now. Daniel, I asked you so many times. I begged you to be honest with me. Why didn't you tell me? Daniel's answer was a whisper. Because I knew, once I told you, you'd finally see who I really was. The room grew impossibly quiet. And Dr. Phil, sensing the magnitude of that statement, leaned back and said, Well, now she does. The studio felt colder now, as if every confession Daniel had made in the last few minutes pulled warmth from the room. Rachel sat motionless, her hands trembling in her lap, her eyes swollen from crying. The audience watched her with a mixture of sympathy and disbelief. Some covered their mouths. Others shook their heads. Many leaned forward, the same question weighing on them all. What else is he hiding? Dr. Phil shifted in his seat, giving Rachel a moment to breathe before guiding the conversation forward. Rachel, he began gently, what you just heard is life-changing, life-altering. So I want to ask you this, right now, in this moment, what are you feeling? Rachel inhaled shakily, struggling to form words. I feel stupid, she said finally. I feel like the last 15 years were just. She choked on the sentence. Were just a story I believed in, but he didn't. Her voice trembled like a glass about to shatter. Dr. Phil raised a hand softly. You are not stupid. You trusted someone you loved. That does not make you foolish. That makes you human. Rachel nodded, but her expression didn't change. The pain in her eyes seemed anchored deep. Daniel reached a hesitant hand toward her, but she recoiled immediately. "Don't," she whispered. "Don't touch me right now." He pulled his hand back, his shoulders collapsing inward. Dr. Phil turned his attention to him. "Daniel, you said you lived 2 lives. You said you lied because you were afraid she'd see who you really were. But you still haven't told us the full picture." Daniel's throat tightened. I told you everything." "No," Dr. Phil said firmly. "You told us the surface. But you don't live a double life for 15 years without a reason, without a pattern, without something deeper driving it." Daniel looked down at his shoes, his leg bouncing nervously. Rachel leaned forward, voice breaking again. "Then tell us. Tell me why. Give me at least one real answer after 15 years of lies." Daniel exhaled slowly, like someone about to dive into freezing water. "I grew up watching lies fix things," he said quietly. "My dad lied to keep the peace. My mom lied to avoid fights. Our whole house survived on pretending everything was fine." He paused. "I learned early that lies are easier than the truth." The audience let out a collective sigh, not of sympathy, but of realization. The puzzle pieces were starting to click. Dr. Phil shook his head. "That may explain it, but it doesn't excuse it. Many people grow up in unhealthy environments and still choose honesty. You had 15 years to break the cycle." Daniel nodded, wiping his eyes. I know I messed everything up. I know I hurt her. I know." Rachel cut him off. "You didn't mess up, Daniel," she said sharply. "You built a whole life on lies. A whole marriage. You stood next to me at anniversaries and birthdays and vacations, and you looked me in the eyes knowing everything was fake." Her voice rose, the pain breaking through the heartbreak. "Do you know what that does to a person? To their self-worth? To their trust in people? You didn't just lie, you stole years from me." Silence swept the room. Daniel lowered his head, tears forming. "I never wanted to hurt you," he whispered. "But you did," Rachel replied. "And you kept doing it. Every day." Dr. Phil clasped his hands together. "Rachel, I want to ask you something important," he said gently. "And I want you to answer not as a wife, not as someone who's hurt, but as a woman who deserves honesty." Rachel looked up, her breath uneven. "Do you feel like you ever truly knew him?" She stared at Daniel for a long moment, a moment heavy with truth. "No," she said finally. "I knew the version he showed me. I knew the story he made up. I knew the mask, not the man." Her answer hit Daniel hard. His shoulders slumped, his jaw tight. Dr. Phil continued. "Trust is not something you can patch with promises. It's rebuilt with transparency, with vulnerability, with accountability. And right now, Daniel, you're still giving half-truths." Daniel looked confused. "What do you mean?" Dr. Phil leaned back, studying him with piercing clarity. "There's something you're avoiding, something you haven't said. I can see it on your face, I can hear it in the way you answer, and I can feel it in the hesitation before every sentence." The audience murmured again. Rachel turned sharply toward Daniel. "What is it?" she demanded. "What are you still hiding? Don't you dare sit on that stage and lie again." Daniel's hands shook visibly now. His breathing quickened. Dr. Phil leaned in further. "You've told us about the emotional affairs, the lies, the secrets, but you haven't told us the real reason you avoided making the marriage legal." Rachel's eyes widened. Daniel's breath halted, like the truth had been punched out of him. "Daniel," Dr. Phil said slowly, "were you hiding something from the government?" The audience erupted in gasps. Rachel's hand shot to her mouth. Daniel froze. And in that moment, his silence said more than words ever could. The studio was tense, electric, every eye fixed on Daniel and Rachel. The air seemed thick enough to cut with a knife. After Dr. Phil's pointed question about the legal marriage, Daniel's entire demeanor changed. He slumped further into his chair, his hands gripping the edges of the seat, as if holding himself together physically could somehow hold his lies at bay. Rachel leaned forward, jaw tight, eyes burning with frustration and hurt. "Daniel," she said, her voice barely above a whisper but loaded with venom. "What is it? Don't even try to speak around it. Just tell me the truth." Daniel's throat tightened. His lips trembled. I wasn't planning to tell you this," he admitted. His words sounded like a confession forced out by years of guilt. We weren't legally married. The paperwork, The lawyers. I didn't file it. I kept it all hidden. Gasps filled the studio. The audience collectively leaned forward, some whispering, others shaking their heads. Even the crew sitting behind the cameras seemed frozen, hanging on every word. Rachel's face drained of color. What do you mean we weren't married? Her voice cracked. 15 years. 15 years of anniversaries, birthdays, holidays. Every vow we exchanged, every promise, you lied. Daniel looked down, shame etched on his face. I lied because I was afraid, he said quietly. Afraid you wouldn't stay if you knew the truth. Afraid I'd lose everything. Afraid I'd lose you. Dr. Phil interjected, leaning forward, his voice steady but sharp. Fear does not justify a life built on deception. Daniel, you are not just responsible for lying. You created an entire reality that Rachel believed in, trusted in, and lived in for 15 years. That's enormous. That's life-altering. Daniel nodded, swallowing hard. I know. I see that now. I understand that. And I don't expect forgiveness. I wanted to tell the truth before it was too late. Rachel's hands trembled. Too late? It's been 15 years. Too late for what? To rebuild trust? To salvage our life? You don't even get to say the words, too late. You made it too late. The audience shifted uncomfortably, a low murmur spreading through the room. Many were holding their heads, some mouths open in disbelief. Dr. Phil raised a hand to calm the room. Rachel, I know it's hard, but I need you to hear this. Daniel is finally speaking truthfully. That's the first step. And Daniel, I need you to hear this as well. Speaking the truth doesn't erase 15 years of lies. It only begins the process of accountability. Daniel nodded, swallowing another lump in his throat. I want to take responsibility. I want to be honest. For the first time, I want her to see the real me, even if it's too late. Rachel shook her head, her voice trembling with a mixture of anger and heartbreak. Too late for what? To fix anything? You've taken my trust, my belief in love, my entire foundation. Dr. Phil leaned back, allowing the silence to hang for a moment, letting Rachel's words sink. Then he spoke again. Daniel, you've admitted the lies. You've admitted the reasons. Now, I want to know, why wait 15 years? Why not a day, a week, a month into your relationship? 15 years is a lifetime in a marriage. Daniel's voice was almost inaudible. Because I was scared, afraid of losing her, afraid of being judged, afraid she wouldn't love me if she knew the truth. Rachel laughed bitterly through her tears. Afraid? Afraid? You call 15 years of deception fear? That's cowardice. The audience murmured again, many shaking their heads in agreement. Cameras zoomed in on Daniel's trembling face as he absorbed the weight of her words. Dr. Phil leaned in, his eyes locking on Daniel. This is the turning point. This is where your life and your marriage either crumble completely or where accountability begins. But understand this, Daniel, your actions have consequences. Not just emotional consequences, but real-life consequences for the person you betrayed every day for 15 years. Daniel's eyes welled up, his jaw tight. I know, and I'm ready to face them. I just want her to know I never stopped loving her, even if I couldn't be honest. Rachel shook her head violently. Love? You don't get to claim love after 15 years of lies. Love doesn't lie. Love doesn't deceive. Love doesn't steal someone's entire reality from them. I loved you, Daniel. But I didn't love this shadow you created. The audience was silent now, the weight of the words hanging in the air. Every camera on the stage captured the raw emotion, the heartbreak, the guilt, and the intense tension that had built for 15 years and now exploded in mere minutes. Dr. Phil, ever the mediator, finally spoke again. Daniel, the next steps are yours to define. But make no mistake, this is not about forgiveness yet. This is about truth, accountability, and facing the life you've created. And Rachel, this is about reclaiming your reality and your truth after years of deception. Every action has consequences, and the consequences of a 15-year lie are massive. That's what you are witnessing right now. Daniel nodded slowly, swallowing tears. I understand. Rachel's voice broke again, quieter this time. I don't know if I can ever trust you again, or anyone. Dr. Phil leaned back in his chair, letting the gravity of the moment settle. And that, ladies and gentlemen, is the truth. 15 years of lies don't disappear with an apology. But now, the real work begins. If someone in your life admitted 15 years of lies to you, would you forgive or walk away? Type your answer in the comments. And be honest, your response could help someone facing a similar betrayal. The cameras stayed focused on the couple. Daniel looked devastated. Rachel looked shattered. And the audience, both live and at home, sat in stunned silence, watching a truth unfold that no one could have prepared for. The studio was silent, so silent that even the hum of the cameras seemed deafening. After Daniel's devastating admission of 15 years of lies, the audience was frozen in disbelief. Rachel sat rigid in her chair, her face pale, her eyes wide, brimming with tears. Every muscle in her body seemed taut, as if bracing for the next blow. Dr. Phil leaned forward, his voice calm but charged with authority. Daniel, there's one more question we have to address. It's about the bigger picture, what these lies truly mean. Rachel, I want you to hear this, and Daniel, I need your honesty. Rachel swallowed hard. What is it? Dr. Phil's gaze turned steely. Daniel, we've uncovered evidence. Documents, messages, even legal paperwork. 15 years of deception didn't just affect your marriage. It affected contracts, finances, family obligations. Were you hiding anything that has legal or financial implications? Daniel's hands shook as he gripped the armrests. The audience leaned in, collectively holding their breath. Yes, he admitted finally, his voice barely above a whisper. Some of the accounts, some of the money. I didn't disclose. And the marriage paperwork. He stopped, his face collapsing in shame. It was never filed. Legally, we were never married. The room erupted in murmurs and audible gasps. Rachel's jaw dropped. Never married? All this time, every year, every anniversary, you lied about our legal status. Daniel's shoulders sagged, and tears streamed down his face. I was scared, Rachel. I was terrified you'd leave me if you knew. I thought I could fix it later. But later never came. Dr. Phil leaned back slightly, allowing the weight of the revelation to sink in for everyone. This is the truth that changes everything, he said. You see, Rachel, Daniel didn't just lie emotionally. He built a legal and financial shadow life. And Daniel, that's a serious consequence you now face. The audience was tense, every eye glued to the stage. Cameras captured the heartbreak, the humiliation, the intense vulnerability. Daniel's confession wasn't just personal, it had public ramifications. Rachel shook her head, voice cracking. I can't believe this. You lied about everything, and now I'm left with nothing I thought was real. Daniel tried to reach out, but Rachel recoiled, arms crossed tightly. Don't touch me. Dr. Phil nodded toward her. Rachel, your reaction is valid. You are witnessing the full scope of betrayal. And Daniel, your responsibility is now total. Transparency isn't optional, it's mandatory. Daniel nodded, swallowing hard. I understand. I accept the consequences. I want to be honest from now on, even if it's too late. Dr. Phil leaned forward, addressing both the audience and the cameras. Everyone watching this at home, think about this. 15 years of lies, and the truth finally comes out. Daniel has admitted deception not just emotionally, but legally and financially. These are the real consequences of dishonesty, and accountability is unavoidable. Rachel's tears fell freely now. I don't even know who you are anymore. The person I married doesn't exist. He's gone. Daniel's voice broke. I am still me, Rachel. The man who loves you, that's real. But yes, everything else was a lie. Dr. Phil nodded. And that's the critical part of this story. Real love doesn't excuse deception. Real accountability doesn't come without facing the fallout. Then Dr. Phil turned to Daniel with a solemn expression. We've contacted legal counsel, and the documents are being reviewed. You cannot undo what you've done, but the first step to redemption is complete honesty. The second step is accepting the consequences. The audience was hushed, the gravity of the situation sinking in. Cameras lingered on Rachel, whose body trembled with a mix of grief and incredulity. Daniel's tears fell silently, his face streaked with guilt. If someone in your life revealed 15 years of deception with legal and financial consequences, would you forgive, confront, or walk away? Type your answer in the comments below. Your insight could help someone facing the same unimaginable situation. Dr. Phil looked into the camera, addressing the millions watching online. This is why honesty matters. It's not just about feelings. It's about trust, legality, and the very foundation of a relationship. Lies have consequences, and this is a clear example of how long-term deception can shatter lives. Daniel hung his head, trembling. I deserve this. I accept it. I wanted her to know the truth before it's too late. Rachel's voice was barely audible. Too late. It's always too late. Dr. Phil leaned back one last time, letting the silence linger before closing the segment. And that is the story, folks. The confession that stopped a show, broke a heart, and reminded us all, truth is not optional. Honesty isn't just a choice. It's the foundation of everything. The cameras faded slowly on Daniel and Rachel. She looked away, tears streaming, while he sat, finally unmasked, facing the consequences of a lifetime of lies. The cameras continued rolling, but the studio was quieter now. The storm of emotions that had raged for 15 years and erupted over the last hour had begun to settle. Rachel sat silently, tears streaking her face, trying to process the sheer magnitude of Daniel's deception. Daniel himself seemed smaller somehow, the weight of his lies finally pressing down on him fully. Dr. Phil spoke softly, deliberately, addressing both the couple and the millions watching at home. What you've seen tonight is more than a confession. It's a real-life reminder of what happens when truth is avoided, when fear outweighs honesty, and when deception becomes the default. 15 years of lies leave consequences, emotional, legal, and personal. And while truth can't erase the past, it can shape the future. Rachel turned toward Daniel, her expression weary but clear. I don't know what comes next, she said quietly. I don't know if I can ever trust you or anyone. But I do know this. I can't live in a lie anymore. I need the truth, even if it hurts. Daniel nodded, tears glistening in his eyes. I understand. I've hurt you more than I can put into words. I will do whatever it takes to be accountable, to try to make amends, if you'll allow me that chance. Dr. Phil leaned forward, his voice firm but compassionate. And that, everyone, is the beginning, not the end. Accountability is the first step to healing. Forgiveness is a process, not a guarantee. And honesty, no matter how painful, is the only path to rebuilding anything real. The audience, previously hushed in shock, began to clap slowly, the sound growing as the impact of the moment sank in. Some clapped for Rachel's strength, some for Daniel's courage to finally speak the truth. Others clapped simply for the reminder that honesty, though painful, always carries power. If you've ever been betrayed or discovered a long-term lie, what would you have done in Rachel's shoes? Forgive, confront, or walk away? Type your answer in the comments. Your story could help someone facing a similar situation. Outside the studio, the episode immediately went viral. Clips of Daniel's confession circulated across social media, trending within hours. Millions commented, debated, and shared their own experiences with dishonesty, betrayal, and the consequences of hiding the truth. The story resonated far beyond the confines of the studio. News outlets covered the episode, emphasizing the legal implications of Daniel's lies and the emotional toll on Rachel. Relationship experts and psychologists weighed in, dissecting the emotional trauma caused by years of deception. The episode became a case study in trust, accountability, and the ripple effects of long-term dishonesty. Dr. Phil closed the show with a final message to the audience. Truth is not always easy. It's not always convenient. But it is always necessary. Lies may protect for a time, but they cannot withstand time itself. If you've learned anything tonight, let it be this. Honesty, even when it hurts, is the foundation of every real relationship. And accountability, no matter how late, is the first step toward redemption. Rachel left the stage quietly, holding her head high despite the tears. Daniel followed, his steps heavier, burdened by the weight of his actions. The audience applauded again, acknowledging both the courage and the heartbreak they had witnessed. The episode ended, but the story did not. Online, discussions raged. Millions of viewers reflected on their own relationships, their own secrets, and the lessons learned from 15 years of deception finally brought to light. And in the hearts of those watching, one truth remained clear. Honesty is the only bridge that can reconnect a broken trust. And sometimes, telling the truth is the bravest thing a person can ever do.